And also tonight, the corrupt leaders of Iran, the mullahs, are throwing a temper tantrum after President Trump's decision to pull the United States out of the destructive Iranian nuclear deal. We're going to bring you all the crazy rhetoric coming right out of Iran, plus the equally ridiculous and melodramatic rhetoric coming from your mainstream media, as corrupt as they are. And we have all the highlights and lowlights from today's confirmation hearing for the president's pick to head the CIA, Gina Haspel. She was forced to defend her stellar track record from Democrats who think she's too tough on terrorists. Now, finally, tonight, we mark an important anniversary for the deep state. 1 year ago today, James Comey, on the recommendation of Rod Rosenstein, was fired from his role as the FBI director. And finally, some positive developments to report from the DOJ's ongoing obstruction. All of that plus just breaking now moments ago, Israeli Defense Forces are reporting that Iranian forces launched missiles at Israel from Syria. Multiple rockets were fired. Israel has responded tonight, and we'll give you all the details and that and more in our very important breaking news opening monologue. All right, as we speak, the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, is in the air with 3 released American hostages who are on their way back, thankfully, to the United States after spending months inside hard labor prison camps across North Korea. Now, this was a major diplomatic win for the president and the Trump administration, and a very important step forward for North Korea. And most importantly, 3 American lives, thankfully, were saved. Now, President Trump's historic summit with Kim Jong-un is now moving forward as planned. Take a look.
I appreciate Kim Jong-un doing this and allowing them to go. We've picked a time, we've picked a place for the meeting, or summit, as you like to call it. And I think it'll be very successful. But as I always say, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But it's going to be a very important event. Again, I think this is something that nobody thought was going to happen for years or more.
Where's the summit going to take place?
We're going to announce that in 3 days, Joe. Within 3 days.
Within 3 days?
We're just working arrangements, but
will it be the DMZ?
It will not be there. No.
Do you deserve the Nobel Prize, do you think?
Everyone thinks so, but I would never say it. You know what I want to do? I want to get it finished. The prize I want is victory for the world. Not for even here. I want victory for the world, because that's what we're talking about. So that's the only prize I want.
A date has now been set for this upcoming meeting between Trump and Kim Jong-un, and we'll let you know all the details as we get them. Let me be clear. This diplomatic progress, it is no accident. When President Trump took the reins from Barack Obama, while a little rocket man was launching his ballistic missiles over Japan, he was threatening Guam, threatening the rest of the world, and, of course, testing nuclear weapons left and right, and, of course, ballistic missiles. Now, all of these aggressive tactics have ended, at least for the moment. This thanks to the hard work, the negotiating skills of the president and his brand new Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. Now, after tightening sanctions, developing a strong relationship with the president of China, and threatening to introduce new tariffs, sending multiple carrier strike groups to the region, and berating Kim Jong-un on the world stage, the North Korean dictator is now limping to the negotiating table, and it's on the terms of the United States. But wait, hang on. Remember, just a few months ago, your media, your corrupt, destroy Trump media, was telling you that Donald Trump was leading us to a nuclear war with North Korea. Oh, how could they ever get something like that wrong? Typical. Take a look.
The idea of a nuclear showdown with North Korea keeps you up at night? I would recommend deleting your Twitter app.
He is not merely being cavalier with a threat about nuclear war. He's being cavalier in a way that makes him seem demented.
These are the messages from a person who is not well, from a leader who is not fit for office.
President Trump is goading Kim Jong-un to test a nuclear missile again, to prove its reliability, to show him wrong. And fundamentally, I think it comes across as 2 kindergarteners who are jostling each other, except that each has nuclear weapons.
Well, here's what...
Too late after 100,000 Americans die.
After a nuclear holocaust.
Or after 1 million die in Seattle.
And that's where we are. This is not an exaggeration.
Trump's comments about nuclear weapons have experts worried he could literally inadvertently trigger a catastrophe.
Yeah, that typical media barrage didn't end well or age well. So I wonder if the mainstream media, are they going to apologize for their hysterical coverage, just like their phony Russian coverage, just like everything else they get wrong? Now, it's unlikely because just yesterday, yes, the New York Times, the paper of record, they actually slammed Secretary of State Mike Pompeo because he was absent during President Trump's Iran nuclear deal announcement. Well, then they found out he was actually in North Korea, rescuing and saving American hostages, something Barack Obama could never get done. Now, Trump responded just 2 hours ago on Twitter. He wrote, the failing New York Times criticized the Secretary of State, Pompeo, for being AWOL, missing, when in fact he was flying to North Korea. Fake news so bad. Now, we're going to get back to the abusively biased media in just a moment. But first, we are also following very closely a developing situation inside of Iran. The IDF is reporting that Israel's Iron Dome was able to intercept multiple rockets that were fired by Iranian sources from a Syrian base. No injuries have been reported. I just got off the phone with a high-ranking Israeli official who has now confirmed to me that this was in response to Israel's military actions. And in fact, I have confirmation Israel tonight, not long ago, has retaliated. We're going to have more on that in a moment with Colonel Oliver North. But first, yesterday, President Trump made the important decision to pull America out of that incredibly flawed Iranian nuclear deal. Now, in a few weeks, U.S. sanctions against Iran will be reinstated, likely squeezing this rogue nation economically. And essentially, Iran will now have less money to fund, their proxy wars in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, their funding of terrorism around the world, their weapon systems that are aimed at Israel and other allies in the region. And, of course, the corrupt Islamist political leaders in Iran and the mullahs, they're not taking this so well. You had petulant Iranian lawmakers yelling, once again, death to America from the parliament floor, and even burning an American flag, as you can see. In other words, a pretty normal Tuesday from the parliament in Tehran. Now, meanwhile, Iran's supreme leader went on a totally unhinged Twitter rant saying the U.S. president's shallow, ludicrous behavior wasn't unexpected. The same behavior existed in previous U.S. presidents, yet the Iranian nation is persistent while former U.S. presidents passed away and the Islamic Republic of Iran is still standing. This man's corpse will also be worm food while the Islamic Republic stands strong. And this is coming from a man, President Obama. Think about this. Trusted and handed over $150 billion to. And a promise he got back, well, we're not going to build nukes, but he got to continue to spin those centrifuges. Now, naturally, the mullahs of Iran are also threatening to ramp up their uranium enrichment program. President Trump is not bowing down to these empty threats. Let's take a look.
What are you going to do if Iran starts up their nuclear program again?
Iran will find out. They're going to find out. I don't think they should do that. I would advise Iran not to start their nuclear program. I would advise them very strongly. If they do, there will be very severe consequence. Okay?
Now, sadly, Iran's morally corrupt political leaders aren't the only ones melting down over the president's decision. Yeah, your very own mainstream media, they are also in freak-out mode yet again. I guess they didn't learn from their North Korean coverage. Take a look.
A decision by the president that some say marks the United States' biggest self-inflicted foreign policy wound since the Iraq War.
What we heard was not foreign policy, it was vandalism.
Doesn't this give Iran a propaganda win?
Of course. I guess the good news here is that John Bolton is finally getting the war he's always wanted.
It reinforces the notion that we are something of a rogue country, that we don't honor or live up to our international commitments.
Is he just keeping a campaign promise here? Do we know what he pulled out of? Does he know what he pulled out?
The totality of this president's behavior and decisions does lead me to question why he does anything and whether or not it's to deflect from something else. I don't think he has the moral compass to make a decision based on our own national security.
It's almost like I can't believe anything he does because it seems to be based on a personal antagonism to Obama and a jealousy.
Every night now we get more and more evidence. Journalism in this country is dead and buried. I told you in 2007 and 8. Now this brand new Iran hysteria is only the latest example proving our point. Now let's turn to some important news. Now the president's pick to head the CIA, Gina Haspel. She testified powerfully today before the Senate Intelligence Committee as her confirmation process is now underway. As I have said many times on this program, that woman, Ms. Haspel, is an American patriot and hero. Her work in the CIA after 9/11 saved countless of American lives. It brought terrorists to justice. Still, you have some Democrats attacking Haspel for supporting legal programs that they claim now were too tough on jihadists, on terrorists, forcing Haspel to defend her incredible track record. Take a look at this outrage.
I would really like to have on the record whether you ever called for the program to be continued, which it sure sounds to me like your answer suggested. You said, well, we were doing our job. It ought to be continued. That troubles me very much.
Let me say this about myself. After 9/11, I didn't look to go sit on the Swiss desk. I stepped up. I was not on the sidelines. I was on the front lines in the Cold War, and I was on the front lines in the fight against al-Qaeda.
Very simple. You have an operations officer who is captured. He's being waterboarded. I've asked you very simply, would you determine that to be immoral and something that should never be done, condoned in any way, shape, or form? Your response seems to be that civilized nations don't do it, but uncivilized nations do it, or uncivilized groups do it.
The United States does it.
A civilized nation was doing it until it was outlawed by this Congress.
Senator, I would never obviously support inhumane treatment of any CIA officers. We've lost CIA officers over the years to terrorists. I just gave an example. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed personally killed a Wall Street Journal correspondent and filmed that. I don't think there's any comparison between CIA officers serving their country, adhering to U.S. law, and terrorists who, by their very definition, are not following anybody's law.
And people need to look at that beheading. And by the way, only 3 people, including that man, were actually waterboarded under intense medical supervision. The New York Times reported last night that 9/11 mastermind, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, asked a military judge to share information with the Intel Committee prior to Haspel's confirmation hearings. Really? We're going to let that guy give information? It is unbelievable, despicable, it's disgusting. 9/11, 2001, we lost 3,000 Americans. Now, today, Senate Democrats slammed the CIA's interrogation tactics against KSM, but Haspel provided very important context about this terrorist. I hope people remember. Take a look.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was the architect and mastermind of the 9/11 attacks. His nephew, Ramzi Youssef, was behind the 93 attack on the World Trade Center, and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed financed that operation. He also was behind the infamous Bojinka plot in the Philippines. Tragically, he was the individual who personally killed a Wall Street Journal American correspondent and filmed that heinous act. He also, after 9/11, carried out an attack on a synagogue in Tunisia, and he had other attacks planned. We were able to warn allies about a planned attack, for example, on Heathrow Airport.
You want to see the most evil, despicable act besides 9/11? Go video the beheading of that reporter of which she's referring to. Now, remember, former top CIA official Jose Rodriguez, he's been on this program many times, and back in 2014, he reminded us that the interrogation program against KSM, one of 3 people waterboarded, it actually led our intelligence officials to the career of Osama bin Laden, which led us to Osama bin Laden. Take a look. So, in other words, you're saying that the accusation that these enhanced interrogation techniques were used beyond what had already been disclosed, you're saying is false, number one, and that in spite of their suggestion that they were not successful, you're saying that in fact that's not true. You were there. It was successful.
It was very successful, and for those of us who were there, it is just amazing that they could have come to this conclusion. Those of us who read the intelligence coming out of our black sites every morning and who acted on that intelligence know the value, and basically it led to the destruction of the organization.
It was successful. They were there. Jose Rodriguez, Gina Haspel, thank you for your service to your country. And America now needs you more than ever. It's high time for the U.S. Senate and these guys on their high horse after the fact to confirm your nomination. Finally tonight, more evidence that the deep state is crumbling. It has been 1 year since President Trump fired James Comey. On the recommendation in part of Rod Rosenstein. And it looks like he's longing for his days as America's top deep state arbiter. Now, Comey tweeted out a picture of himself, well, naturally, along with the caption, "Missing the people of the FBI today." Well, many that I talk to aren't missing him. Thank you for your commitment to the truth and for all you do for the good of the country, etc. Of course, Comey was fired for his less than truthful handling of the Clinton investigation, like when he lied about not writing the exoneration in May before interviewing Hillary Clinton in July and 17 other key people, or when he turned the other way as Clinton destroyed evidence, bleach bit, acid wash, deleting subpoenaed emails. And let's not forget, by the way, about Comey's FISA abuse, using Hillary's bought and paid for dirty dossier full of lies put together by a foreign national to lie to a FISA court judge to spy on a Trump campaign associate. And we could go on, but you've heard it before. We don't have all night. Instead, we do have some good news to bring you tonight from the ongoing obstruction in the Department of Justice. Fox News is reporting that the House chairman of the House Intel Committee, Chairman Nunes and Chairman Gowdy, they have now been invited by the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, to the DOJ for a briefing about the latest requests from Chairman Nunes regarding the Russia investigation. This, of course, came after a call between the White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly, and the Justice Department and their officials. Unfortunately, this briefing will be, of course, classified, but maybe, finally, after subpoena, after redaction, after slow walking, maybe the sign that the DOJ cooperation could be improving. I guess the threat of contempt of Congress, well, maybe that had an impact, too. They have been slow walking thousands of subpoenaed documents of Congress. They have been putting in heavily redacted comments. They've been claiming national security is at risk when, in fact, it's been proven at times not to be at risk. We asked the question on this program, Rod Rosenstein, what does the Department of Justice have to hide? All right, another developing story. The media has been running wall to wall with a report that some Russian oligarch made potentially illicit payments to Trump's personal attorney, Michael Cohen. And the media is, of course, featuring salacious details from Stormy Daniels' attorney, Michael Avenatti, who claims to have inside information. He's the guy that's on fake news, CNN and MSNBC conspiracy TV, seemingly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. However, tonight we're learning that the information, or at least some of it, might be seriously flawed. Michael Cohen's attorneys, they are pushing back tonight, saying that Avenatti, in at least 2 instances, apparently accused the wrong Michael Cohen. And Cohen's lawyers say that Michael Cohen, Avenatti is talking about, in one instance, is a Canadian citizen with the same name. In another instance, an Israeli man with the same name. You can't make this stuff up. We'll continue to follow the story. All right, joining us now with reaction to all of this breaking news, we have Colonel Oliver North. Colonel, you alerted me before we came on the air. I made some phone calls. Top sources in Israel have confirmed that multiple rockets were fired at Israel within the last couple of hours, and Israel has, in fact, they were fired from Syria. Israel has responded. No Israelis were injured, though, in the attack against them. This having to do with Israel's previous military attacks against Syria in recent weeks. Nothing to do with the Iranian deal, I was told, at a very high level.
Yeah, well, look, never believe an Iranian, because if their lips are moving, they're lying. But let me just a little bit more about that story, and then we can talk about some other stuff. 20 missiles fired from a Syrian base. They are Iranian missiles. And those are the kinds that they're also trying to transship into Lebanon to give to Hezbollah. The Israeli Air Force is responding, at least when you and I first talked about this about 20 minutes ago, they were responding to it. It's interestingly enough, Sean, the same base from which I went into Syria with the IDF back in January. I think we've got some footage of that. I was on the air with Fox News. We were allowed, in fact, encouraged by an Israeli defense official to go into Syria, where the Israelis have built a military hospital inside Syria to help.
Colonel, I want to make sure the video we're showing our audience, that's the exact location that was fired at today, where nobody in Israel was hurt, but Israel's responded. And it was fired, we believe, Iranian missiles from Syria.
Yes, that is exactly the report I received from a very senior Israeli defense official. He's the man who went with me, not this guy it's showing on the screen. I want to be very clear about that. But the colonel who called me is a dear friend, and he knows what he's talking about. He knows all about the Iranian threats to Israel coming out of Syria. He was forecasting it. The base that we went in from is the one that was attacked today.
Colonel, I also have confirmed it from a high-ranking government source within Israel. So everything that you had told me about a half hour ago, you know a thing or two about the release of hostages. What is amazing here is the rapid turnaround. America sends a strike force. The president demeans little rocket man all over the place. Sanctions are put in place. An alliance with China takes place. This did not happen. The North Korean dictator crossing the DMZ, now talking about denuclearization of the entire peninsula by accident. This happened peace through strength.
Absolutely. And what has happened here, Sean, is being rejected by the far left because, one, you're absolutely right, the deep state cannot stand the prospect of this president being reelected. They're going to do everything they can to undermine it. And these are the kinds of propaganda. This is what this is propaganda. It's lies about the president that are being used to dissuade the American people from supporting him. And, of course, a lot depends on this upcoming election in November.
Real quick.
We're also seeing the same thing happening with the NRA. There's no doubt about it. That's why, as painful as it has been, because you and I have been doing war broadcasts since I joined this network 17 years ago. And here we are talking about another attack on an ally by the Iranians from a foreign country called Syria. I look at what I'm doing, joining the NRA as their president, as a sad thing for me, because I can't come on every day with you like we used to do. But the fact is, the same thing that's happening to this president is happening to the NRA right now. It is a massive left-wing attack on a great institution
Colonel,
for civil liberties.
They're lying about me every day.
Right.
The media is vetting me more than they vetted Obama. I understand. I get it.
God bless you, buddy.
Well,
Semper
listen,
Fi.
Semper Fi, safe home, my friend. And I will tell you this: we're praying for those 3 hostages coming home. We're watching the Israeli situation heating up with Syria and Iran, and we have much more. Ed Henry with the latest on the arrival of these hostages who've been freed. Dr. Gorka, Daniel Hoffman next. Are awaiting the arrival of the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and the 3 American hostages released by North Korea. Huge news today. Joining us with more on what to expect as this plane begins to land tonight, Fox News Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry. So we have the hostages freed. Israel has now retaliated. Iranian rockets fired out of Israel. And, of course, the president's withdrawal from that horrific Iranian deal. My words, not yours, sir.
That's right, Sean. A major breaking news night once again. And this is really a coup for President Trump, as his new Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, is coming home from his second secret trip in recent weeks to North Korea with a major foreign policy victory in tow. This caps a dramatic day of diplomacy. A short time ago, the 3 previously imprisoned Americans landed with Pompeo in Anchorage, Alaska, for a refueling stop, then quickly got back in the air. They're now on their way to Joint Base Andrews, as you just showed, right here in the Washington area. They'll land in the middle of the night after a day of ups and downs. There was some uncertainty about whether this was really happening after the Secretary of State spent 90 minutes meeting with Kim Jong-un and then returned to his hotel. Reporters traveling with the Secretary asked Pompeo if the Americans were coming home, and he crossed his fingers because he was still not sure it was a done deal. But then a North Korean official soon arrived to say these Americans were freed. Tony Kim, Kim Hak-sung, and Kim Dong-chol. They appear to be in good health, which is a big deal. Remember the heartbreak we all felt after Otto Warmbier was released from North Korea, only to die shortly thereafter because of the horrific treatment he received from the communist nation. So the focus tonight is on these free Americans. So the president is already looking ahead at how this sets the table for his summit with Kim that is likely coming in early June, saying today this will be a great moment for the whole world. A short time ago, you'd see he tweeted, looking forward to greeting the hostages no longer longer hostages at 2 a.m. Fox News will be there. I'm hosting live coverage in the middle of the night. The president, as well as we believe Vice President Mike Pence, are going to greet these Americans as they return to U.S. soil, Sean.
All right, Ed, I'll be watching. I never go to bed before 4 a.m. anyway, so I'll be watching that.
Henry.
That was said with Otto Warmbier and his family, and the horrific condition that he came back in, and obviously the tragedy. But good news tonight. Thanks, Ed. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Now, according to a release from the State Department, that would be Mike Pompeo's State Department, the 3 freed hostages have issued a statement writing, quote, "We would like to express our deep appreciation to the United States government, to President Trump, to Secretary Pompeo, and the people of the United States for bringing us home. We thank God and all our families and friends who prayed for us and for our return. God bless America, the greatest nation in the world." Can't wait for them to land. Joining us now with reaction to all the big developments today, former Deputy Assistant to the President, Fox News National Security Strategist, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, retired CIA intelligence officer. We welcome him to the Fox family. Of course, he's been on a lot. Our friend Daniel Hoffman. Dr. Gorka, let me start with you. These hostages are freed. It took a military presence. It took the president taunting Kim Jong-un. It took sanctions, but it worked. And I don't believe the president brought in $150 billion in cash and other currencies and cargo planes to make this happen.
Isn't it a great night to be an American, Sean? This is stunning. The president and Secretary Pompeo, with this one act, have done more for America than Obama and his whole cabinet did in 8 years. No more appeasement. No more middle-of-the-night pallets of currency being shipped to our enemies. What did we pay for these 3 Americans to come home, Sean? Nothing. We dealt with a dictator as you should deal with all dictators. No appeasement. Walk softly and carry a very big stick or an aircraft carrier battle group. That's how you get things done. It is, a new day for America. And this is a message for all dictatorships. And this is the model for how we deal with Iran. We've shown Iran no more appeasement, and I'm telling the president and everybody in his circle, we use the Pyongyang model that Pompeo has effectively deployed to deal with regimes like Iran, Sean.
I've known Mike Pompeo a long time. I'm very proud of what he did. I'm very proud of what the president did here. Daniel Hoffman, I think you rightly have been telling people manage your expectations. I know we're talking about something that is massive, and that would be the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. So important. But also, we never thought a year ago that Kim Jong-un would cross the DMZ into the arms of the president of South Korea. We never thought he would agree to have such talks. And we would no longer see missiles flying over Japan, Guam threatened, or talks about firing missiles that could reach New York and Boston. Yes, we should manage our expectations, trust and verify, peace through strength, but there's certainly far more hope than we have had in a long time.
Right, and this was a very tangible and positive result of this administration's foreign policy, Sean. And while we celebrate this diplomatic and humanitarian success, we need to remember as well that there are reportedly about 150 to 200,000 political prisoners in North Korea. This is like akin to the Soviet gulag. And while our 3 former hostages, after they receive the medical care I'm sure they'll need, I think they'll be very valuable sources of information on these North Korean prison labor camps and the awful, horrendous conditions to which innocent people are subjected. And it's important for us to call out North Korea on their horrific behavior towards their own population and towards our citizens as well.
I want to go Israel tonight, earlier today, a couple of hours ago, multiple missiles fired by Iran from Syria. No Israeli has been hurt. I talked to high-level government sources. Colonel North has his sources in the IDF, thank God. But Israel has struck back tonight. From my intelligence sources, they went directly to where those missiles were fired. This, of course, was in retaliation to Israel effectively taking out a lot of these sites that they have been using in Syria, Dr. Gorka.
Yes, so the wonderful thing about the nation of Israel is that they have capabilities in the region that are unmatched. And when they feel a threat and when they have the requisite intelligence, they take action. The massive change for Israel now is that now they have us to stand with them shoulder to shoulder. As the vice president said on the anniversary of the 69th year of the founding of the state of Israel, I was in the room with the vice president, who says, we stand with Israel. Israel's enemies are our enemies.
And in a week, this weekend, look what's going to happen, Daniel Hoffman. Jerusalem, now the capital. So many people promised, it happened. President Trump, another promise kept.
Extraordinary sea change, Sean, absolutely. But I think this is a precursor for more kinetic action in Syria. Iran is using that territory against Israel, and I fear that it may only get worse.
It may, and I don't know if I'd take on the Israeli Defense Forces, nor do I think you take on Israel's best ally, the United States. Thank you both. When we come back, the media continues to do Robert Mueller's bidding. Greg Jarrett, former Trump campaign aide Michael Caputo, they're up next. A lot more breaking news straight ahead. President Trump's huge foreign policy gains this week as we await the release now. We know these hostages are on their way home. Thank God. The media still continues to do Robert Mueller's bidding. They can't stop talking about Russia, Stormy. It's unbelievable. Here was reaction. Former Trump campaign aide Mike Caputo and the author of the upcoming book. This will be a #1 bestseller. The Russian hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump. Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. All right, let's go right to where we are. So every single time subpoenaed documents, they slow walk.
Right.
Every single time they say redacted for national security, we're finding instance after instance where it wasn't about national security. For example, Comey, who lied, said the FBI didn't think Michael Flynn was lying. Or they go to the next step, which is they just say no. And Congress has oversight. So now there's a threat that they will be held in contempt. Rod Rosenstein and Jeff Sessions.
You even have members of Congress who've now drawn up articles of impeachment against Rosenstein, because that's how far you have to go to get him to capitulate and follow the law. If you ask the Department of Justice and the FBI for documents that you're entitled to as members of Congress in your oversight capacity, if you ask them for their grocery list, they'll say that's classified, sorry, national security secrets, intelligence information, lives will be jeopardized. When push comes to shove and they have to hand over the grocery list, you find out it's meat and potatoes and cookies. And there's nothing whatsoever to do with national security or privileged classified information, which means the Department of Justice and FBI cannot be trusted to be honest because they're trying to cover up their own misjudgments and corrupt conduct.
All right, let me go. Michael Caputo, I've watched you in interviews. You were on with us last week. You were recently before the special counsel for how many hours?
For 3 hours. I think it was a little shorter than they had hoped.
Yeah, and they said to you, we'll be watching you on TV.
They did, and it was very clear they'd been watching me on TV all along. And initially, I was pretty scared about it because it's pretty expensive to go out there, but I'm not very scared about it anymore. I got to tell you that, these slow-walked FOIAs and these other requests for documents, this isn't new to the Trump administration. This is the same reaction we got from the DOJ, the IRS, and I think they're the same people. This is a problem that goes back for another presidency, maybe even two, and it's got to change fast because the American people deserve to have these documents, and certainly the congressional oversight
Did you take that as a
them.
threat we'll be watching?
Oh, absolutely. I think that,
Who said
they
it? Do
know
you
that I'm a
remember the
little
name
bit
of the attorney
intimidated
that
by
said
the
it?
cost of legal fees. They know that many others are as well. I think that the cost of these investigations, the Senate, the House, Mueller, are keeping a lot of people quiet, but I'm not going to be quiet anymore.
Do you know who said it? Which attorney?
I do. I'm not revealing the names of the attorney or the two FBI agents that were in there with me. I think that they were mostly pretty professional. I don't think they discuss these issues with somebody who appears on TV a lot. It's mostly people who are, behind the scenes, quiet people like, J.D. Gordon, others who've been doing their jobs for America for many, many years.
I hear that, and I hear we're watching you on TV.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to go on that idiot Hannity show. That's how I interpret that. Oh, we'll be watching.
The government is possessed of immense, unfettered power. They can destroy your life. They can leave you penniless, as they did with Michael Flynn. And for what? It turns out he was telling
Michael Flynn had to sell his house.
That's right.
Michael Caputo had to sell his house.
They can ruin your life. That's how powerful the
Ray Donovan in the Reagan years. Right. Where do I go to get my good name back? By the time this is all said and done, there'll be many of those people. Newt is next. Also, another big story we are following tonight. President Trump's nominee for the CIA director, Gina Haspel, was grilled by Democrats during her confirmation hearing earlier today. Haspel, in fact, defended her record and the record of the CIA. Take a look.
First of all, CIA follows the law. We followed the law then. We follow the law today. I support the law. I wouldn't support a change in the law, but I'll tell you this. I would not put CIA officers at risk by asking them to undertake risky, controversial activity again.
Joining us now, the author of the brand new book. It is out June the 5th, Trump's America. And, of course, you can get it on barnesandnoble.com. We have a link on Hannity.com. Former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich is with us. She followed the law. We know that only 3 people were waterboarded, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. And because he was waterboarded, Mr. Speaker, he gave up the courier, which led to bin Laden. These are people, after 9/11, 3,000 Americans slaughtered. I find a lot of the questioning today was beyond insulting for Ms. Haspel.
Well, it was beyond insulting, and I actually thought that Marco Rubio had it perfectly at one point when he said to the committee, if we can't approve her, who are we going to confirm? As you know, virtually every senior intelligence person has come out and said she's the right choice. She is a great professional. She has served the country as a patriot. And frankly, there's something a little disgusting about partisans who put their party above patriotism and who are willing to attack and smear those who have literally given their lives for the purpose of defending America. And I think you can go back and pick out Democrat by Democrat, people who I think really should be ashamed of the way in which they dealt with somebody who has spent her entire lifetime trying to keep us safe, including people who, frankly, behave in such a partisan way that no wonder she's disgusted with them.
Frankly, I think she's an American hero, along with Jose Rodriguez and those other people that were able to get information to save American lives. It seems like many people have forgotten. I want to move on to North Korea. We're awaiting these hostages now that are coming back with Secretary of State Pompeo. Chuck Schumer literally said today, he goes, well, he is warning that Kim Jong-un is trying to con Donald Trump into letting his guard down during nuclear negotiations. And he doesn't want the American people to fall prey to this. And I'm like, the only person that got conned was Bill Clinton, who paid, billions in energy subsidies to Kim Jong-un's father. The only other person that got conned was Barack Obama and John Kerry when they gave $150 billion to the mullahs in Iran that are chanting and threatening again today.
Well, my only point would be the same as I said a while ago. Senator Schumer, as he has with blocking appointees, keeping the U.S. government undermanned, in many ways crippling our ability to do things. Senator Schumer, once again, would rather be a partisan than a patriot. He'd rather try to score points, which are pretty stupid points. We have no evidence at all that Mike Pompeo, who graduated first in his class at West Point and who was a remarkable student at Harvard Law School, I don't think Pompeo is going to be conned by anybody. But more importantly, why can't the Democratic leader of the Senate be happy for a minute that 3 Americans who've been locked up for a year in a dictatorship are coming home? Why couldn't this be an evening of being happy for their families? And I just think the partisanship is so bitter that they just can't bring themselves, forgetting President Trump.
It really is this, though. that if Donald Trump's successful, and we have 14 states with record low unemployment, lowest level of unemployment for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, women in the workplace. The tax cuts are working, revenues that are at an all-time high. And now the president is having huge success in North Korea when the media and Democrats were warning he's starting a nuclear war because he dared to warn Kim Jong-un and show a military presence and call him Little Rocket Man, and they were scared to death. Oh, no, he's starting nuclear war. And it's the same with the Iranian mullahs. If, in fact, the world would join us, the Iranians would have no choice but to stop their nuclear program.
Well, that's exactly right. And by the way, the Congressional Budget Office report that says that this April was the highest revenue in American history. Think about this. The tax cuts led to such dramatic economic growth. There's the highest revenue, the